I'm surprised to see so many faces early in the morning in Las Vegas. I'm surprised I'm here. My name is Joel Eagle. I work for McDonald's Corporation. Today we're going to talk a little bit around some of the technology we use to make a modern experience, both for our customers as well as our, from an IT perspective, internal customers. That would be our staff. I'm going to go through a little bit around some factoids about McDonald's. We'll talk a little bit around what you think you might know about McDonald's. I'm not here to tell you if the chicken nuggets are real. Yes, they are. I'm not here to talk about whether we have pink slime. No, we don't. You want to talk more about that and debate it? That's fine. We can do that after the show. But how many people, show of hands, have seen the movie The Founder? Awesome. Now, you'll know some things around how McDonald's came about around The Founder. There are some things that corporate probably doesn't agree with, whatever. I personally think Michael Keaton got an Oscar snub, but it was a great movie. But a lot of cool things came out around how we operate and what kind of business we're in. So with that, some factoids. Now this information is a little bit old, but it's very public in terms of our revenue, things like that. In fact, it's around 2014, 15 data that we show up here. So one of the things that came out at the end of the movie, The Founder, which I think is fairly impressive, and I don't know that it matters so much whether you think where your ethics are around McDonald's or the fast food industry or QSR in general, right? But we at McDonald's feed around 70 million people every day. Every 24 hours, not a month, not a whatever, just every 24 hours, 70 million people a day. And the reason I mention that is you need to think about the logistics and what it requires to support that kind of operation. Put a product in your body, right? Food, right? Not a click and ship, right? But food prepared, shipped around the world. We operate in about 120 countries now. You'll see 35,000 plus restaurants. And I'll get into what the way you should think about a restaurant, especially from IT folks as well, is what you should think about when you think about a McDonald's restaurant, what that really is. The way we like to look at it is we have quick service restaurants is the industry we're in, but the way you need to think about a restaurant is it's a factory. So you go in as a customer in the front side and you see menu items and things to order, and then something happens, you order something or the drive-through, whatever you do. Things churn in the background and out comes an output to you, right? So if you think about this as just-in-time manufacturing, you have raw goods coming in the back door. We have a number of processes in place. You order something as a customer SKU, maybe you call it a number 2 or whatever, and that means a whole bunch of SKUs go in action. There's servers inside these little factories. These servers parse out menu items throughout the restaurant. They only send the information to the right station at the right place, the right time to put an order together. All this comes back together at a collection point. Either we give it to you as a drive-through or we give it to you across the counter. Lots of things happen. We like to do all that inside of 90 seconds. We don't always do it, but let's be honest. The slowest thing in a McDonald's restaurant is you. Making up your mind, changing your order, trying to pay with cash. Right? You're the slowest thing we have in the operation, right? But you are the customer. There's an old saying, the customer is always right. I prefer the older saying that says the customer is not always right, but they are the ones with the money. So part of what we'll do today and talk about some of this technology and CTERA specifically is talk about how we think about that within McDonald's and how we think about delivering solutions to both our internal staff as well as to customers such as you. With that, a couple of things some of you probably know about. In the US, we went to all-day breakfast last year. My favorite thing that happened, I think, is all-day breakfast. For those of you who don't know, I think we were around 6% bump in comps when that happened. We thought maybe we would cannibalize people that just got lazy, wanted to come later, eat breakfast. Turns out we got 6% bump in that. You see the little the guy with the riding moped, and throughout Asia, we've been doing e-commerce and digital, if you will, in Asia for quite some time. There's about $1 billion worth of business we do just doing delivery in many places throughout Asia. That's been running for quite a while. And you'll notice there are different products around the world for different markets that we have, which create. I'm using the Maharaja Mac as an example. Fabulous. If you ever go to the Indian places where they serve that, it's a fantastic sandwich. That'll make other people in PETA happy. But anyway, so we have different products that we offer around the world, which create challenges around how to deliver that. We also started thinking differently around how we can provide services to our customers around the world, which for us would be McDonald's staff, right? If you think about that. Something on the earlier slide, I think I mentioned, if you think about the McDonald's system, we're talking about close to 2 million people. When you think about who all is in that system, from a corporate perspective, we don't employ that many directly, but that's about how many operate in the system. And we thought about ways to provide things like service tests to them, or incident problems to them, or how to help them collaborate, how to help them get to data. As you can imagine, 120 countries, we travel a lot, we go around the world a lot, we need access to data, we need networks that work when you show up in an office, restaurants need to work, et cetera. And what I've listed up here is some examples of things that we did and said when we put out support for our customers, if you will, the people who are supporting you, providing things for you, in what ways do we want to engage them? So part of it is we can't have things that don't scale. I mean, 2 million people, 120 countries, 35,000 restaurants. Scale is always something we're thinking about. There's another phrase at McDonald's, a sort of internal phrase that we have, I'll share with you is, and they kind of drummed this into my head when I first started with McDonald's some years ago. It's not real until it's in the restaurant. I don't know how many people work in the back office, but how does it make you feel? If you're doing financials or you're doing help desk, right, it's not real, it's in the restaurant. So we think about how to be relevant to restaurants with solutions, and we think about scale on that. And we think, if we're going to do things like enable you to communicate with us, why am I providing you bespoke ways of doing it that don't scale and require high touch points? Why not just let you chat with me in whatever version of chat you have in whatever country you're in, and let you interface with me that way? Why don't I use mobile apps, right? How many of you took training on how to use your airline app to get here today? Then why in the heck would I ask a customer of mine to take training on how to use an app? And I'm talking about help desk people, right? I'm talking about IT staff. Why would I ask them to learn, to take training on how to do something better if the world doesn't ask you and you do it just fine? I didn't get trained on my banking app either, but I bought an airline ticket and I got here, right? So that's the thinking that we want to change around the way we deliver solutions. Yes, they need to work, they need to be reliable, but they need to be simple. And we'll get into some of that. Some of the things you need to think about as well is, and I've seen this theme happen in a couple of other sessions here at Gartner, is understand your business. Do you know what business you're in? Show of hands of people that think they know the business McDonald's is in. Do you know what business we're in? Come on, somebody saw the movie, right? Shout out something, anything. Real estate. So if you ask Ray Kroc, and he's been asked many times, what business you're in, he had 2 answers depending on who he was talking to, I think. One, real estate. The other, show business. Show business. It's about the experience, right? Many of you might remember birthday parties, going to McDonald's birthday parties. Some of you might remember just what it was to tell your mom, I don't want the homemade greasy burger thing that you do, I want the McDonald's cheeseburger. I'll tell you, in some places in the world, if you Google, you can do it now if you like, but if you Google up McDonald's weddings and add something like Singapore instead of Walmart, you will see grandiose planned wedding events at McDonald's locations throughout the world. And I'm not talking about goofy things. I'm talking about full-on wedding planned events that happen around the world. It's a different way of thinking about what McDonald's means in different brands. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do you understand the business you're in? Do you understand what's relevant to them? I gave you the example of it isn't real till it's in the restaurant. When you think about delivering solutions, are you thinking that way when you pick your technology partners to drive those solutions for you? This is the things that we were thinking about. I'll get into in a little bit around why we worked with CTERA and why they were a fit for McDonald's and what we were trying to accomplish. The other thing is, we talk about agile size of your organization. This doesn't mean right size. This doesn't mean lay off people. It doesn't mean do that. It means get the right partners, have the right skill sets to do things, and get a mindset of, let's try something, right? Not doing something is the worst thing you can do. We talk about progress over perfection. That's our current CEO's mantra, which means you need to accomplish something. Think of things in 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 iterations, tying back into the agile thinking. Do you understand if you're successful or not? What does successful mean? So if I were to say to you, we wrote an application specific on mobile devices for our end users to do things like contact the help desk. How do I know if my application is good? Is it adoption? Is it absorption? Is it customer satisfaction? A lot of things to think about, but do you understand? If you don't understand those things, it's going to make it difficult for you to understand what success really is unless you've got an easy one, right? Go save $1 million. Well, that's an easy thing if you save the money or not. But were you successful at doing it? Were you sustainable at doing it? Think of ways to measure healthy, not just success in terms of an ROI, if that means anything. Innovate and modernize, the point there is, and consumerize things, We're McDonald's, and I personally, Joel, do not know the right way to tickle somebody's brain to make them do something. All the marketing people in the room study this. I don't know how to do that, right? But I can watch and learn what works in the marketplace. So I gave you the example of who's been trained on their banking app. So when we wrote our app, here was the requirements. I said to them, you have 8 weeks. We will agile this. We'll iterate every Friday. You will come in on Friday. We will have a stand-up meeting. We won't even sit down. We'll iterate around some decisions. We'll decide where you need to go. Requirement number 1, there will be no training. No one will be trained on how to use the app. If your app requires training, fail. Number 2, you do not get to sit down and ask a bunch of people what their requirements are. What you can do is we gave them 10 roles from admin to executive and said, here are 10 roles in our company. You can have 2 hours to talk to them. 2 hours in a room, ask them whatever you want, and that's it. Go off and write an app. Right? Go do what you need to do. I would argue with you that made the app focus on simple things. You create things like a button that says, help desk, call me back. A button that says, reset my password. Simple things, right? But these are things that help people get through the day and be successful. So let's talk about a little bit around what's happening with McDonald's today and what was the impetus that drove us to need a solution like CTERA, which we'll get into about later. The picture you see on your left is our Oak Brook, Illinois location. That is the U.S. It's the Plaza building. It's the U.S. headquarters. It's not the actual corporate headquarters, but it's a great example of something built, I think, in the late 60s, something like that, in Oak Brook, Illinois, which is about, from the water, it's about 20 miles from the water. If you're going due east of, or due west of Chicago, yeah. And what you see on the right is our new building being built right now. In fact, we're supposed to move into that building in May, April or May, depending on who you listen to, into this new building, which happens to be in the city of Chicago, right in I wouldn't call it an edgy area, but a very hip area of Chicago. Nice restaurants up and down the street. It's going to change the vibe around who works there. It's going to change a lot of people that have to commute to this particular office building. All of this is when we had this opportunity to move this, which means somebody gave us the money, right? When you're going to move somewhere, you get money. So we in IT people think, well, we got to do something with it. We got to create solutions that support our customers. We got to be thinking about mobility. We got to be thinking about work from home. We got to be thinking about all those sorts of things for the existing use case. The existing use case is in that building, slightly less old, if you want to say that, slightly younger than the building is a file server that has files on it that people are storing stuff on. As an S drive, I think it is, right? And people are using it for everything, and it grows overnight. It's an actual box, I think it's, got some disk arrays or something like that today. But anyway, it's just file server sitting there. And so people have grown to use it. It's kind of like a weed. You got to entrench with how they want to use that box and the use cases. I won't divulge too much about it, but let's just say in IT, we continually get surprised by that critical process that has to be run on your personal shared drive. And so we get surprised by that. So these are kind of use cases stuff. Going to the new building, my first thought when I went into it was, and I challenged the team and pushed them pretty hard, is I don't want nothing physical in my office. Nothing. I want it all in the cloud. Don't do that. That's not the solution we ended up with. We got a hybrid solution through, again, working with CTERA and others around what's the right fit for us, and I'll get into why that is in a minute. But largely, it's a matter of, again, thinking about how I want to go from somebody logs onto a machine, maps an S drive, goes to S drive, gets their files, to doing things like doing it with mobility on your phone, on a tablet, accessing the world anywhere, data encrypted in flight and at rest, et cetera, right? So we make the CISO happy, the CIO happy, and the man I work for, the CTO happy. So let's talk about it. So some of the key challenges we just mentioned, right? You have, I don't know what's happening in your companies, but I have this, it's not like a Moore's law, it's just an observation that I said data will consume whatever space you give it. So it's a bit like your house, right? You buy a new house, bigger house, you buy more stuff. So if you provide data access to somebody, they'll just consume whatever's out there. There's no end to this. I don't know if any of you have solved the problem, but on-prem solving that problem is extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult for me to guess how much infrastructure you have to buy. We're a chargeback organization, so all of our customers pay by the usage for that stuff. So they think, you know what? You gave me buy the drink, I'm drinking them all. Right? How do I govern that? That sort of stuff gets to be interesting. So you start thinking about cloud solutions and why I wanted to do that. If you look at the performance piece of this, again, we have people that have written elaborate access databases and SQL stuff, Excel things that are sitting out on the rest drive, right? That need to get access to and run, and they get upset if it doesn't run within minutes. You think about loss of user productivity, and around that particular solution when it's not available. Remember, it's an endpoint, single point of failure, disk, file server sitting in our corporate office somewhere. And of course, you have to maintain security for that. I'm sure some of you, like us, have people that work for you called lawyers, and they get upset if they think about data that either comes into the building that shouldn't be here, that's their worst fear, or data that leaves, or is in the hands of the wrong person, right? So they care about the zip code that data lives in. So when you go talk to your lawyers about zip codes in cloud, they get a little weird, right? You have to boil it down for them, make it kind of simple. No offense to lawyers in the room, but you get what I mean, right? The challenges you have with that. So how do you solve that problem? So with their opportunities around leveraging cloud economics, most of you are fairly aware, whether you're talking an S3 or Blob or whatever out there in the world, Google storage is a race to the bottom with respect to expense, and we want to take advantage of that. If you think about the way we want to help people collaborate, we want to go from this mindset of I just happen to have this extra hard drive mapped on my machine out there that's got this unlimited amount of data associated to it, to how do I make that more collaborative? How do I make sure that the same data doesn't show up 57 times in one place or one server system because everybody's got a myopic view to that particular data? You think about speed, and this gets into our solution. What we want to be able to do is get as much data as we can off-prem for all those reasons like security and reliability, recoverability, that sort of stuff. But at the same time, offer that person who's written that exquisite Excel statement, right, to be able to run, within the building and get their results quickly back to their device they're used to. As well as if you think about the security piece of this, right, we want to make sure that we're talking about cloud. We're not talking about, public cloud, put on your credit card, buy whatever you want to buy, right? We're talking about McDonald's. A lot of you in your companies, you'll have your own VPC, your own cloud instances, and you want that to function really as an extension of your data center from this perspective of security and access, right? You don't want to have bespoke one-off solutions. You want to make sure that your solution that you use ties into all of your current security and methodologies you have, RBAC controls, role-based access controls, et cetera, that you want to have. You want to make sure that all of that works for you, so then you can turn this thing on, call it reliable, call it a day. So here's the architecture. The no secret piece, this is what we built. You see the little person down on the bottom left, and you notice this thing called S drive. So before I get into some of how this technology is and what it's for, today the user is S drive. Remember what I said about the no training piece around what we want to do? It's not that we won't do any training or any heads up, but the idea is this. We're going to swap out all of the technology in the background. We're going to move a lot of data out to the cloud. We're going to provide all of these new capabilities. But that user, when they come in the next day and they need to access their data, they're going to do it the exact same way they did it the day before. Their machine's going to map an S drive. It just so happens S is going to be somewhere else. It's not going to be in the building, right? Or there'll be a redirector. We'll talk about the edge file. There'll be a redirector outside the building. So we have a VxRail system that we built to put VMs on. On that VM is where the CTERA edge filer runs. It does all the directing of the traffic. We'll get into a little bit more of that later when Jim comes up. But the point is the user experience. I'm not forcing you to learn anything today. You just come in today, you don't even know what happened, right? We've replaced the technology. You don't know. Another benefit is I don't have to buy millions of dollars worth of infrastructure. I don't have to go buy millions of dollars worth of licensing. I start with just what I need. From there, we can scale up to our future needs, which could be, we're talking about that 2 million person ecosystem. I don't think we'll get quite there, but my point is what works for one works for all in this particular given situation. And the experience stays the same. With that, you think about, I get one platform. I don't have to have multiple platforms with how I manage this thing. It ties into my existing security setup, so all of the rights, the flow downs, that if you give access rights to your shared drives and things like that, all of that stuff stays the same. I don't have to rewrite it. I don't have to go create a new bespoke system. All that stuff works. You'll see the things like the stateless local cache that most of you are aware of that. That's mostly for speed and performance, right, the way we do that. And again, the seamless migration means I don't have to, a user with the role in our Active Directory, all of the rights they have still apply to the S drive, even though the S drive is now completely somewhere else. That, for me, we made it simplistic, and it makes one of the reasons why we could go with an option like CTERA to begin, at least at the corporate offices, before we scale out, right? Again, less need to change, less disruption for our particular customer. Oh yeah, I'm loving it. So if you think about it, on this one slide is the reason why I'm loving it, right? I remember back there, I'm not impacting my customer. I'm not making huge investments to get this thing off the ground. If for whatever reason this needs to change in the future, there's flexibility and agility to do so. So if you think about it, one of the things that we're adding though, but versus putting all that infrastructure in, making sure that the user's S drives still work with all the security, is this idea that you now can travel around the world using your mobile phone or tablet or your PC and get access to that exact same file. In other words, S drive works for you everywhere you are. And I verified this morning it works behind the Great Firewall of China. I asked him 3 times to make sure that works. We know it works. You know, most of us travel over there, and there's interesting things you can do and not do, as you guys know. But we want to make sure that in-flight encryption works, right? There's some countries that like to de-encrypt everything as it comes in. You guys are aware of that. We want to make sure it works in countries around the world. Again, if you're operating in 120 countries, sets of languages, making things complicated on how to do it is a non-starter for us. So the other piece of that is if you think about the portal of managing all this data, one of the things that we'll start to be able to do with CTERA technology and not with our old mapping your S drive is start to understand how our customers are using the data, how they access it, where does it go, what are they doing with it, how many times a day, what do the access requests look like, so that we begin to put some analytics around managing how much data we have to have, managing what the performance is to users, measuring that. Today it's just somebody calls a help desk and says their stuff is slow. We have no known reason why. We just go guesstimate it. Anyway, this is a new technology that comes with it, a new capability to go mobile. And all I did was tell somebody that tomorrow you come in and map your S drive the same way you do today, and offer them a mobile portal to get to. So what's next? If you think about what we're doing specifically with McDonald's and the reasons why we want to do this, you can see them listed out there on your left. All of the right reasons you go off and do things. When people ask us for something at McDonald's, I don't know about you, but our business is we care about the cost of things a great deal. A lot of pressure on us to do things at the lowest cost we can, so there's an ROI investment that has to be measured. Most of the time our ROI, I'll tell you, is, again, a little insider secret, maybe the same for you, is we do ROIs that are largely based on cost, largely based on some type of return, and intangibles often get forgotten. So that ability for users now to run things mobile is something that we didn't even consider as part of the business case because I don't have a tangible way to measure it just yet, but it's there, right? So what's the focus on? Obviously, if I no longer have to worry about maintaining and managing a file or device in my building, I have to worry about power to it, UPS, disruptors, paying somebody to manage that thing, somebody go down and dust off the disk drives and put a tape in it every once in a while, all that stuff goes away. For me, that means that everybody involved in doing that, or the resources involved in doing that, now focus on what we want to do, which is getting back to what I said earlier, being relevant to a restaurant. So what's the roadmap? Little recap, we talked about it, right? Know your business, culture, and appetite for modernization. If you don't have an appetite for modernization, I think I've heard this in other Gartner presentations, don't. There's only so much you can force on people, right? Which again is, if you don't have an appetite, you're mapping your S drive, you don't even know that I've modernized you. The relevant infrastructure use cases, when you go to put in something like CTERA, understand what it is, understand what your relevant use cases are, and this is basic to understanding how to build out a good ROI or build out a good use case, right? Understand what you need. You don't need to tackle every use case. We have a number of them. We use other products to move large files around that we need to move for like digital media, think about commercials, things like that. And we have another solution in-house today that we're going to be taking out of that solution, which is cumbersome, expensive. It ticks the box in terms of things being auditable and encrypted and things like that, but not well received by our users. What we want is to go to more consumable product, which is what CTERA does for us, right? So understand that use case, how that pulls in, and all the relevant ones. There's many more that are out there, but we stick to the ones that we know are going to have the high value, run our POC that way. Talk to Gartner. There's Gartner people, there's your plug. If you look at Gartner, obviously you'll see CTERA top right quadrant for their industry, but we talk to them a great deal on how other companies are solving this problem. How do they get around doing these things? What actually works out there in the world? And the reason we talk to Gartner gets back to understanding your use cases and failing fast, right? I want to fail with you in a conversation before I have to fail over an SOW and then fail over a contract and then fail over penalties, right? I'd rather fail at that conversation level if I can. Data security aspects, obviously this is a no-brainer. Most of you are aware of this. What kind of, do you need encryption in flight? Do you need, what levels of things do you need to put around your data? Do you need data governance? What are the things about your data that you need or your company wants to know about it? Again, one of the unique things about McDonald's is there's a lot we don't want to know. Believe it or not, corporate McDonald's does not want to know about everything that's happening right, within a McDonald's restaurant everywhere around the world. There are reasons for that, right? So there's some data we have to put governance on around what data we're ingesting, things like that. The in-house POC. This really made it for us, right? So we could talk about it. Again, we want to fail fast somewhere. We work with CTERA, we work with others, we work with EMC. We brought in equipment. We actually ran this stuff in our own locations or in our own offices to make sure it does what in fact it says it's supposed to do. And then all with the mantra of simplifying and converging our infrastructure. I want less stuff. I want less disk, I want less power cords running into things, I want less stuff to have to manage. I just want to be able to access it and just be there. So with that, I'll bring Jim up from CTERA to talk about a few things, and don't go away. I think there's a nice giveaway in about a second or two, but I'll take questions from you. A professor of mine said once that it takes the average college student 36 seconds to generate a question to a professor so they won't look stupid, and it takes a professor 19 seconds to wait on you. So if you think of something after I'm up here, you're like, oh, we have a question over here. So the question is how many users are in scope right now? We're limiting it to corporate, so say 4,000 to 6,000.
Do you have a terabyte cost?
I'm sorry?
Terabyte cost reduction, cost per terabyte.
So the unit of cost was CTERA. So what I'll do is I'll let CTERA talk about how they monetize that, if that's okay. I like to think we get a sweet deal because we're McDonald's, but I'll let them talk about how they want to do that. Yes?
Have you had any latency challenges with the S-Drive access where you don't have the local caching?
Yes, because of some of the legacy, the question was, do we have any latency issues if you don't have the local caching? So in my original statement, when I came to the room and I challenged the people in the room, I said I want no infrastructure here. I mean, I was just adamant about it. As stubborn as I am, somebody beat it into my head that said, listen, the people over there in digital and the people over there in finance, right, who have these little queries that we talked about, are freaking out if they don't have a response time of whatever they need. And so we said, fine, we're going to go with the local cache solution. So that's the thing that makes it fast, if you will, that the local cache device, which Jim can get into on the way that works. So again, from a user perspective, there's only a performance increase, if you will, because I don't want to steal stuff from CTERA, but if you just go from an old to a new machine, stuff gets faster, right? But then if you put in their technology, how they do caching, another thing that's important is, we talked to legal on the use case there where they said, wait a minute. This data right here needs to stay in this zip code. So with the caching device, we can tag data and say, you go nowhere, you stay. Right? But then if you load it up into memory cache, it's much faster, and it does this whole algorithm. Jim will talk about how that works, and go to the booth about how the whole caching scheme works. Yes, sir? I'm sorry, it's really hard to hear you back there. So one more time?
You experienced any security breach, any ransomware issues?
So the question was, do we experience any security breach issues? So let me be candid with you, right? We are rolling this out. So I don't have it everywhere in the world just yet. I'm just looking at corporate. And so the answer is no, but I do want to qualify that with, I haven't put it everywhere in the world just yet, thinking about how the cloud will access. I don't anticipate that. Again, we have, one of the requirements for the security was encryption in flight and at rest. So, and the data never, yes, it goes to the cloud, but it goes to our cloud. It goes to our instance of Azure, right? Our instance of AWS, our instance of where it goes. We still manage those instances, and to date, we've not had an issue like that I'm aware of. I'm sorry, yes, ma'am, you had a question? Go ahead.
Corporate and then rolling it out.
Right. So the question was, what about time frames in terms of probably everything, right, from the architecture down to the decision to rolling it out? There's a person in the audience today who's responsible for rolling some of this out, and they're the reason it's slow. But we won't name that person. But I'm the architecture guy, right? So for me, nothing's fast enough. Once we decide what to do, it should be built in one day, right? But fair question. What I'll tell you is this: we have been methodical about what we're doing. It's largely tied to that move schedule of the building, and it's got to tie into that. What you can imagine is a big program in and of itself of how we're rolling things out and how much change we can force or push on customers. We are right now, though, doing the data synchronization. We intend to have the solution in place without most of our customers even knowing it by the time they move to downtown next year. And again, it's largely governed by that. I will tell you that from an implementation of technology perspective, I mean, it's again, because you can start small, you can have this in relatively quickly. I mean, it's as fast as however your company can do SOWs, get through legal, get something signed, and put something on the floor. I mean, it's as fast as that. Right? I mean, it's not a. Here's what I'll tell you: it's less about buying into the architecture as it is buying into the strategy. If you buy into the strategy, the architecture lines up to it, makes sense. You check all the use case boxes, and off you go. Is that fair? I'm sorry. What were they?
Yeah, I'm curious, is the European regulation GDPR on your radar? And if it is, has it changed your architecture?
So the question was, is GDPR, the European regulation, I think it's General Data Protection Regulation, something like that? Yes. So obviously, we conduct business around the world. We have all kinds of data. And getting into our those experiences I talked about earlier, we now want to know something about customers. Right? So all of that applies to us. It's definitely on the radar. We talked about things like with CTERA, you can mark data to stay put. You can mark data where it needs to go. We can do some analytics around what that data, how we want to govern that particular data. So it's definitely on our radar, GDPR is. I'm assuming it's on everybody's radar, right? I think the European Union is interesting with the whole get it done by May. But okay, right? It's something we thought about when we were looking at the use case security for this. Yes, sir.
How involved is Microsoft, or did CTERA take care of all that on the back end?
So I'll answer that. And again, I think CTERA can talk a little around how they leverage cloud and what kind of solutions they can bring to you. Because we knew things like GDPR and others that we wanted data to live in places we control, then it's not about CTERA front-ending it and we don't know where the data is behind it, right? So we spec'd it that way. I'm not sure if there's they maybe talk to you around different options for that, but for us, it's put it in our cloud because we govern our cloud. See that in 19 seconds. Yes, sir.
How long was the POC?
Gosh, how long was the POC? 3 months? Something like that. And again, that's largely, here's what I'll tell you on the POC was mostly around getting the right end user testing around stuff, right? Getting them to understand if the performance was good and making sure that if the performance wasn't good that particular day, is it the device, is it the network, what happened? So there's some of that you want to be thorough about, right? And again, that's what we talked about earlier. When you set up your POC, give yourself time to do that, right? Make sure you get right buy-in from the customer. So we did about 3 months. Yeah, the question was how long was the POC? Sorry. Sir. No, the question was, do we experience any file corruption or file locking, like lockout piece with a solution? I'm going to say no, but let me be candid with you, right? Like I said earlier, we are rolling this out, right? I would assume we're not going to see that. We have load tested it, we've thrown a lot of stuff at it, but nothing to date. Anybody else? No one's going to ask me about the next Happy Minute. All right, cool. With that, I'm going to let Jim say
Great. Thanks, Joel. That was excellent. Are there any questions that Joel or I can answer for you? Yes, sir. The question is Store Simple versus the CTERA Edge Filer. Store Simple, typically an organization would use for large backup or archiving jobs. Our gateways will have that capability as well, but they also offer a functionality, a NAS functionality, a collaboration functionality for sites. An office in Dallas collaborating on files with an office here in Las Vegas. There are cost effectiveness benefits to the CTERA gateway as well, and we can dive into that deeper if you'd like. Our chief architect is here if you want to come up after the presentation.
And one thing I would add, right, to the use case piece that I didn't mention earlier was I talked a little about moving digital media around. So we work with a lot of digital media companies, right, that move stuff around. So when we send out media or we send out certain things like that, we want to have it encrypted where it goes. We also want to be able to audit where it goes, who got it, how they got it, when they got it, et cetera, to confirm when they've got certain data that leaves our company. So now we're talking about going from McDonald's to another entity, but still having that at least auditability of knowing exactly where it went, who we shared it with, and keeping it encrypted in flight. So that was another one of the important things that we need to be able to do, especially for the other system I mentioned as part of our use case.
Yes, sir.
Are you looking at putting the edge file into each of the McDonald's locations, or is that only in the corporate sites?
So I mentioned earlier, so the question is, are we looking at edge devices in all locations or only in corporate sites? I don't want an edge, as much as I like the technology, I don't want edge devices anywhere I don't have to have them. So unless there's a reason to have it, from an architecture perspective, I will continually push to not have it, right? And that's mostly due to security, it's mostly due to reliability, support costs. I have a couple of guys here that do operations, they understand what it means to put footprints. I mean, there's, again, 120 countries, everybody has an office, right? Some we support directly, some we don't, but that could get to be a complex world. And even within the US, you're not talking about one building that runs the US. There are offices throughout the US, not to mention restaurants, right, that are out there. So my preference is no, the strategy is don't do that. Do it where you have to do it.
Just to add on to that, the edge filers, our platform is highly scalable. So if Joel wanted to, he could easily put one at each McDonald's branch really in the world. It could scale that high. We've got tens of thousands of filers and branches for a very large customer of ours. So the platform's built to be essentially infinitely scalable. So and there are no sort of network hiccups when you keep adding gateways or CTERA edge filers onto that architecture. Got one right here and then one in the back. Physical and virtual. The question was, are the filers physical only? They're physical and virtual. Right back there. The question is, how do you scale the physical filers? Because they're caching enabled, you can tier whatever data you don't need locally off to Azure or whatever cloud or on-prem data center you're using. So essentially, if you want to have, let's say, 16 terabyte local, always at the edge, you can do that and scale off infrequently accessed data. Oh, right here.
Yes. In fact, we're pushing, so the question was, do we offer any virtual desktop interface? So we are trying to push, especially our partners and suppliers, to use VDI, right, as a way to access our organization and do the things they need to do. And it won't, the image itself won't look much different. So that S drive will still happen, plus all the rest of stuff they want to use. So whether you're looking at a VDI image or you have to have a laptop that you use, image the same, looks the same, feels the same, other than you're in a VDI. Okay? So we have both, depending on the use case, depending on what kind of user you are. The follow-up question was, is it a persistent image? And so we do both based on the type of worker you are, the role you have.
Anything else? Well, thank you everybody for coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you.